So the last example was kind of trivial. It allowed us to load some information from the server. It allowed us to do some work on the server, but they were kind of contrived examples. And in this particular example, we're going to build a little bit more of an application. So we do have a bigger application here, and it's going to start off, in our index.html file. We're going to have so our style sheet, our script file, and we're going to have the display area that is going to look like this. And there is a JavaScript call here down at the bottom when the page loads. We're going to load our items. So let's jump right into that JavaScript. That load items function is right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to call getData, just the same getData we had before. I believe it's unchanged from the previous example, except I believe that there's an added try catch just so you can see how that works if there is a communication issue there. And it's going to display that list. So instead of creating an anonymous function here, we're actually calling a named function. We're going to pass in a named function, and we can take a look at that. That's display list is right here. Here we go. So we're going to use that to build some HTML. But before we go to that, let's actually try to look at what the items are now. So we're going to go back to our page, and we're going to type that URL directly so we can see that JSON. And you can see there's actually nothing there. It might look like an error, but it's actually just empty brackets. So that kind of gives us an empty array. So that's how that's going to start. But if we were to add something like, let's say 3 carrots, we'll click add here. Now we have a shopping list that has 3 carrots. And if we go to our list, the one we just had here, so that was load SL items, you'll see we have an array, and that array has one object, and that object has a property that is title, a property that is quantity, and a property that is ID. So you can see here, this is now going to start populating things. So that's going to, load items is going to call that out, and then it's going to use display list. And display list is just going to build up some HTML. If we have anything in that array, we're going to build up an unordered list, and we're going to add list items to it one by one. Now, if we don't have anything in that list, we're going to create just a empty or a string that says there's no list item. So if we have an empty array, we're going to just populate a message that identifies that. One thing that you can see here is we're actually creating edit item here and delete item. So what we're doing here is we're actually providing a function that we're embedding in the HTML, and we're going to call that with the ID for this particular item. So we're kind of building up this list one by one so that we can have that edit and that delete button. So let's take a look first at the delete because it's a little bit simpler. So if we look for delete item here, we can see we're going to get a confirm. So we've already seen the prompt and we've seen the alert. Confirmed is going to give a yes, no. So when we're going to confirmation dialog first. And if we do want to delete, we're going to take that ID and we are going to send a JSON request with that particular object as our parameter object. And we are going to delete that item. And then we'll call item deleted. So here again, not using an anonymous function, we're going to call a named function. And you can see here, if we have a result and the result is okay, we will have deleted that item. And that will do it. So then we'll load the items again. We'll just call load items and that will load everything. So when we delete an item, the first thing we will do is we'll call delete item. Then we will get the confirmation. Then we'll send the JSON request. And remember that send JSON request is going to take a parameter object, a target URL, and then a callback function. We're going to create an XMLHttp object. Then we're going to set a event handler for that particular XMLHttp. When that ready state is 4, we're going to parse the object and call it the function. Here we're just going to automatically include that object to parameters function we looked at in that last example. So all we have to do to start loading data or to start reacting is have our parameters that we want to send to the server, have the URL where we want to send those parameters, and then have a callback function. So once we post the parameters, you remember the post parameters function is here, so we'll do all of this work and we'll send it, and then once we've done that, we'll start the onReady state change function or event handler will start being called. When that is equal, when that ready state is 4, then we'll do all of these things. We'll set the response, or we'll get that object, and then we'll set or call the callback function. So in the case of our delete, if we go back down to the bottom, that delete is going to call item deleted, and we'll see we're going to get a result. We'll load those items, or we'll show that error. And if we delete, you can see there's our confirmation. Are you sure you want to delete? Yeah, why not? We can always create it again. So again, now you can see no list items. So that's nice and easy. Now, if we want to create we'll put that one back. We'll say 3 carrots again, and we will click edit this time, and you'll see now we actually have this. We've kind of inlined the edit here, and what was going on there is we have the edit item. So, here we go. Where is it? This is the item loaded. We're going to go back up here. So we have this edit item function, and edit item is going to take that ID, and when we call edit item, we're just going to load the data for that particular item. And we could actually pull that from, remember we had we could look directly at the JSON. We could load SL items to get the ID, and then we could call, let me grab that URL, get item. And there you go. Now we can actually just see that in JSON. So you can kind of see how this JSON approach is allowing us to build sort of an API at the server. Instead of function calls, we're going to call particular paths in our URL, and maybe instead of parameters, we'll have parts of that URL, or maybe we'll actually have HTTP parameters. And then the result that we would return, if this were a Java, like JavaScript, we might return an object, or if it were Java, we might return an object or some primitive type. But here, using this particular approach, what we actually get is an object that is defined in JSON. So it does allow us to treat this a little bit more like an API, and be a little bit more focused on what each one of our services or each one of our URLs provides. So we can now change this. So we could say, let's say 5 carrots, and then we hit save. So what actually happens when we save it is we have this the edit item. And the item loaded is going to, again, just rebuild that text and set a new form, so that we can save that item. And when we save that item, which is here we go, save item, we're going to collect that ID. We're going to collect the new quantity and the new title, and then we're just going to send those to the server on this save item URL. And that save item, let's go ahead and pull that up. We can see what happens here. So save item is going to retrieve the quantity, retrieve the title. It's going to get the ID, and it's showing. Notice that it's setting item ID to none, because if we're using this for creation, then we're just going to ignore, we won't have an item ID. So if there's not one, we're going to retrieve it. So now if we have an item ID, then we will save that. Basically, we call our app. We're going to save the list item, and we actually have everything that the application can do defined in this SL app Python file, and that's going to be the thing that interacts with our SL data storage, where we're actually going to save these items. So you can see all of the different code here for loading, saving. If you want to see some more data store examples, this is a good place to take a look at. There's some logging happening here, so you can kind of review logging. And you can also see how all of these entities are built and stored in the data store. This is a nice little example if you want to dig into it, but since we're focusing on the REST or the JavaScript AJAX JSON part of this, we won't dig into it just now. But know that it's there, and you can take a look and you can explore it. So we have this app, and we have the main.py. So this is going to save our list item with the item ID we used and the title and the quantity. And if we don't have one, we're going to call create list item with the title and the quantity. So this kind of makes things very clean in the main.py. You'll notice this approach of separating our application and our data storage and our objects and our web processing code. Now what we've done here in this example is and this is kind of the first time we've done this with AJAX and JSON. So this is sort of like the way we might proceed. All of our web processing code, getting forms, routing requests, all of that happens in this main.py file. And then all of the application logic happens in this SL app file, and all of the data storage happens in that SL data storage file. So this is a way to kind of look at all of these, kind of across the whole space. And then we just output a result that says, okay is true, or we have an error, but that's going to be sent back to the server. So that allows us to edit pretty easily. So we can see the edit, we can see the delete, and there's a lot of different things going on here. You can see there's several different pieces happening. So I think we can get an error to happen if we maybe delete this and hit save. Oh no, that one just saves fine. So there's probably an error there that should cause some issue if we don't have anything. And I don't think that it will, similarly, I don't think that'll do anything if we don't have a value here. So let's put that back. But you can see that there is the opportunity to set errors here. I actually don't know what might trigger it because this is such a basic application at this point. But you can see when we do run into errors, there are a few places where we might log those. And we have, here we're just logging an error if there is a problem at the server. But if you take a look here, we have an error area, and that's in the HTML. So if we, it's not let's see here. So the error area is up here at the top. And if we do run into an error, this will be populated. Now, like I said, I don't know what we would really do that would trigger an error because it's a pretty straightforward and basic application. I don't know that it's bulletproof, but it will definitely, it might not be so easy. But you can see here, this is going to allow us to hide the error area by setting the display to none. So that just sort of hides it. But if we do run into an error somewhere, we can show that error here. So yeah, that'll kind of, and you can see show error, which is just going to do the opposite of what we had in that hide error. It's going to take that error, the div element there, it's going to set the display to block, and then it's going to set that message. So if we were able to trigger an error, you'd see that up at the top. But this, this will allow us to, one box of cereal. We could have a, well, I made a mistake there, so we can edit that. There we go. We'll hit save, and you can see now we have that on our shopping list. Maybe we have 2 loaves of bread, and we add that. And you can see we can kind of populate this. It's stored in the data store. It's persisted. If I come back to this later, it'll still be here. And if I can delete or mark things off as necessary, kind of a quick and easy little application that demonstrates sending those requests, taking on JSON, and storing these in Cloud Data Store. So take a look at the example. It's up in GitHub, and you can explore it. See how it works for you, and maybe it'll help to answer some questions as you're developing your own applications. And hopefully you'll have a lot of success as you explore this. But this is the start of where you can kind of complete and build those complete applications. This is where now we're getting into how you might build something that is, end to end using some good approaches, some AJAX JavaScript. This kind of feels like the first time we've encountered something that is sort of like a real application that we could use. So thank you for watching, and I hope this has been useful for getting you to the next space in your applications.